Good morning. It is Monday, March 9th. This past Saturday night marked the end of the 2020 legislative session. Several important bills have passed the legislature over the past 60 days, and I wanted to take a minute and just talk to you about some of those pieces of legislation. Two in particular have already been signed by the governor. Senate Bill 209 deals with minor boundary adjustments in municipal annexation. This bill protects individuals, businesses, and freeholders by making sure they have to consent before being annexed by a municipality. It also preserves this method for those municipalities that want to work collaboratively with those entities to bring them into city limits. This bill received bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, and we were very pleased to see Governor Justice sign it into law this past Thursday. Another bill that's grabbed a lot of headlines is Senate Bill 657, which creates tourism development districts in West Virginia. This bill was largely geared at getting the Hilltop House project in Harpers Ferry off the ground, but it received bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, and it too was signed into law by the governor this past Thursday. Now, there are several bills that passed the legislature in the closing days that have yet to actually be transmitted down to the governor's office. Once the governor receives this bill per our Constitution, he has 15 days to act. He can either sign them into law or veto them, and if he chooses to do nothing, then after 15 days, those bills will become law without his signature. So there are several bills that have yet to go downstairs, and I'm going to take a minute just to give a quick recap of what we expect to head downstairs in the next few days. House Bill 4092 was a very important bill that deals with foster families in West Virginia. Currently, there are over 7,000 foster children in our state, and unfortunately, that number continues to increase. This was a broad-reaching bill that allocates almost $17 million for additional funding for foster families, and it's also going to enumerate a Bill of Rights for foster children and foster families. It was a widely championed piece of legislation that passed with only one dissenting vote in the House of Delegates, so that bill will be going down to the governor shortly. House Bill 4524, it deals with some blue laws in West Virginia. Currently, there are 13 counties in West Virginia that are either all or in part dry. And when I say dry, I mean you cannot sell wine or spirits for off-premises consumption in those counties. This bill would make the entire state of West Virginia wet for the purposes of off-premises sales. But it also protects localities that decide if they want to decide to stay dry. Under the bill, a county commission that is currently dry or a municipality that's currently dry, city government, can choose to stay dry. If they want, they can actually put that on the ballot this November and let their citizens have direct input. That bill passed at 11:30 on Saturday night, so we're excited to see that going downstairs to the governor's desk. Now, House Bill 4001 is called the Mountaineer Impact Fund. This was a bill envisioned and championed by House Speaker Roger Hanshaw, and it's going to provide a vehicle for investments into out-of-state entities to try to bring more jobs and economic development into West Virginia. It received very strong bipartisan support in both the Senate and the House, and we were pleased to see that bill get across the finish line. On the education front, there were two bills that passed. The first was Senate Bill 303, which is called the Students' Right to Know Act. It's going to require that students in K-12 education receive several different pieces of information related to their future so that these students might get a better idea of what they want to do after K-12 education. Many of our students may choose to go to four-year college, but it might give them a better idea of what pathway they want to take. Other students are going to go to our career and technical colleges, and others are going to move straight into the workforce. But this bill is going to require many pieces of information to be given to those students, including salary information, the types of jobs that are available, where those jobs are located, and so forth. Now, Senate Bill 839 creates the Post-Secondary Advisement Council, and this is going to be a council that's going to consist of a wide range of stakeholders, including businesses, who will be able to work with the education community to make sure that the needs of employers are being met with today's students. Now, there's some other bills that passed this session that received a lot of attention. One of those would be Senate Bill 583 that deals with solar energy. There's been a lot of talk about what this bill really does, but let me give you just a little bit of an idea. Under West Virginia law now, with this bill, if it's signed into law, utility companies, electric utility companies in West Virginia will be able to apply to the Public Service Commission to create a limited amount of solar energy. That is very important for out-of-state investors who are looking to come here. Our development office requested this bill because they said when they're talking to companies out of the state about investing here, that is one of their requirements, is that solar energy be in the electricity portfolio in West Virginia. It's a demand of their customers, it's a demand of sometimes the companies themselves or of their investors. So that bill received strong bipartisan support and will be on its way to the governor's desk. House Bill 4615 is the West Virginia Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. Now, what this bill does is it tightens up some trespassing penalties and penalties for damaging property on critical infrastructure. And critical infrastructure in this bill is defined very closely to what is at the federal level. It includes hospitals, it includes pipelines, it includes power plants, and many others. But it's an important piece of legislation that also passed. And then House Bill 4619 basically approves of the plans of our electric generating utilities to install middle-mile broadband in West Virginia. We still have a lot of areas in this state that aren't connected into into the internet, the broadband internet. And so what this bill does is it authorizes the power companies' plans to install that middle mile because they've already got the poles and the lines for power running to these areas. So that bill passed unanimously this weekend from the House and the Senate. Now, one bill that did not make it across the finish line on Friday was Senate Bill 275, which would have created an intermediate appellate court in West Virginia. This has been an idea long championed by the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce. In 2009, an independent judicial review commission was established, and that commission was chaired by none other than former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. And that commission directly recommended the creation of an intermediate appellate court. The bill crossed out of the Senate, it made it through the House Judiciary Committee, it made it through the House Finance Committee. And despite the fact that it was strongly championed by the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Governor's Office, the West Virginia Development Office, and the State Senate, 15 Republicans ended up jumping over and joining all Democrats in opposing this bill. It was a disappointing outcome on Friday because what this bill would have done would have been another guarantee of strong appellate review in West Virginia. But more importantly, it would have taken steps to help reduce some of the backlog in our circuit courts to speed up access to the court system. That bill didn't pass on Friday, but several other very important pieces of legislation passed in this session, and we would certainly say it was a very productive session from the West Virginia Chamber standpoint. So I want to appreciate all of those of you who have watched these videos throughout the session and given me feedback, whether it's email or calls. We're going to go ahead and be looking over the next couple months as we're getting ready to head into the primary elections and then in November into the general elections. But this past Saturday night marked the conclusion of the regular session work of the 84th Legislature. So thank you again for your support of the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce.